Supermax Corp posted its best ever quarterly performance since its incorporation, as fourth quarter FY20 net profit skyrocketed more than 2,500% to 399.6 million ringgit. Revenue more than doubled to 929.1 million ringgit. For FY20, net profit grew more than fourfold to 525.6 million ringgit, while revenue grew 38.6% to 2.1 billion ringgit. Unsurprisingly, business was turbo-boosted by the COVID-19 pandemic, which, according to Supermax, has resulted in the emergence of new consumers and new consumption levels not previously seen before. Currently, Supermax is in an oversold position, while average selling prices have been rapidly increasing since March, when COVID-19 started to spread globally. The group expects demand to remain buoyant in 2021 and beyond, adding that its highest ASPs have not yet been reflected in the current quarter. In terms of capital expansion, Supermax will be building 5 manufacturing plants between now and 2022, adding another 22.25 billion gloves, which brings its total annual capacity to 48.42 billion pieces. The total investment for these plants is 1.3 billion ringgit. The Kuala Lumpur High Court has granted Petronas and the Naga National interim stay against the Inland Revenue Board on additional tax assessments that have been imposed on the two conglomerates. Petronas had been slapped with an additional 3.6 billion ringgit tax bill. It's now been granted a stay pending the full hearing of a judicial review to challenge the additional tax assessments and the outcome of the Bintulu lumber case on August 26th. Last week, the court had granted a similar order to Petronas over a 105 million ringgit tax claim. Meanwhile, TNB was granted a similar stay order against IRB's assessment of 1.8 billion ringgit on similar grounds concerning its reinvestment tax allowance. The tax bill was for the year 2018 and comes on the heels of other previous notices TNB had received in past years. The other notices are still pending in court, and TNB has obtained an interim stay order against the payment of the disputed taxes. Former Penang Chief Minister Lim Guan Eng claimed trial in the Penang Sessions Court to one count of graft in relation to the 6.3 billion ringgit Penang Undersea Tunnel project. He is charged with allegedly abusing his position as a public officer to obtain 3.3 million ringgit as inducement to help a company bag the construction contract. The said firm is owned by Datuk Zarul Ahmad Muhammad Zulkifli, a senior director of Consortium Zenith Construction. Lim is alleged to have done this between January 2011 and August 2017 at Komta Penang, while he was the state chief minister. The offence carries a penalty of up to 20 years jail or a minimum 10,000 ringgit fine or 5 times the sum received. The case has been transferred to the KL Sessions Court, which had fixed the case for mention on September 9th. Last Friday, Lim also pleaded not guilty for allegedly soliciting from Zarul a 10% cut in profit from the same project. He is due to face another unspecified charge tomorrow. De facto Law Minister Datuk Taqiyuddin Hassan claimed in Parliament today that former Attorney General Tan Sri Tommy Thomas had in principle agreed to Riza Shahriz Abdul Aziz's money laundering settlement. Taqiyuddin read aloud a representation letter which he said was minuted by Thomas and sent to Senior Deputy Public Prosecutor Datuk Sri Gopal Sri Ram. The letter, according to the minister, was an application for the withdrawal or reconsideration of the money laundering charges against Riza. In return, Riza would give up 3 of his properties in the US, which were forfeited by the US Department of Justice. In this letter, the former AG was said to have written, "I am prepared to consider this representation." Taqiyuddin claimed this shows that the then AG had generally agreed that Riza's case should be compounded and settled without going through prosecution. Taqiyuddin also alleged that former Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad and Lim Guan Eng had intervened in a case involving property tycoon Tan Sri Lim Soon Peng, who is said to have received monies linked to 1MDB. He said that there are documents to prove that Mahathir had asked for the freeze on Lim's bank accounts to be lifted and that the ex-finance minister then wrote to Thomas, who passed the instruction to the MACC. AirAsia X says its Malaysia operations carried 2,291 passengers in the second quarter of 2020 versus 1.46 million a year earlier, representing a 100% drop as it remained in hibernation. The carrier said it maintained only minimal operations in supporting repatriation of travellers as well as freight and cargo services during the quarter. Passenger load factor stood at 38% versus 80% a year earlier, while capacity fell to 6,032 seats from 1.81 million seats previously. As for its Thai operations, passenger load factor stood at 82% in the second quarter based on a capacity of 377 seats and the 309 passengers carried during the quarter. As at the end of 2Q, AAX had a fleet size of 40 A330 aircraft. Its Malaysia operations fleet size stood at 24 A330 aircraft, while its Thailand associates fleet size remained at 14 A330s. The remaining 2 A330s are used by its Indonesia operations, which have been suspended since 2019.